Now, moving from Victoria to New South Wales now, and more extreme energy nonsense is taking over, despite facing an increasingly dire housing affordability crisis, which is leading to skyrocketing rents. The New South Wales government has just introduced tougher energy efficiency rules, great timing, for new homes and renovations. This means large commercial developments, big state projects and some home renovations, maybe yours, will now have to submit to a net zero statement for approval. Joining me now is leader of One Nation in New South Wales, Mark Latham. Mark, great to have you with us. There's never been a harder time to build, buy or rent a home, and more green tape is the last thing people need.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. The announcement today is going to add $25,000 to the cost of building a new home in New South Wales, and it comes at a time when we've got rising interest rates, rising construction costs because of the labour shortages and supply chain problems. But overall, Chris, this is just part of the difficulty that we've got. The $25,000 is on top of the rest of the BASIC's energy efficiency code that's been around for 16 or 17 years. If you take that, plus the biodiversity costs, plus the habitat studies and the other environmental costs imposed by the New South Wales government, just to build a new home on an average suburban block is costing over $100,000 extra because of the New South Wales government. So you want to solve the housing affordability crisis, get government green tape and government regulation out of the way and let people build their dream home, the great Australian dream, and knock over $100,000 off the price.
Gee, they're hopeless, aren't they? It's straight out of the Matt Keane green playbook, supposedly in his eyes, and his eyes only, to look more green for the election in 6 months' time.
Well, it's all about a handful of teal seats on Sydney's North Shore. Keane's the treasurer. You'd think he had big economic challenges in New South Wales, like getting rid of the $182 billion debt that he's racked up. But instead he's still obsessed with these environmental programs, adding costs to suburban home buyers, also in the regions, that add to the housing affordability crisis. The timing couldn't be worse, the policy couldn't be worse, and of course, Keane, you can't get any worse than him.
It's just awful. It's just like they're in a cone of silence, disconnected to what everyone else is thinking and feeling at the moment. Now, it's not just Matt Keane and the New South Wales government going nuts, but also the Committee for Sydney, which is a bureaucratic body which looks like it's trying to make life harder, not easier, for people in Sydney. This group has released a plan to ban the sale of petrol and diesel cars by 2027, just 5 years' time. Mark, it's astonishing. Another green policy wish without any due diligence done. Are you going to be able to tell me what price my car will be? How much will it be? Will it be down equal to the other cars? What about the infrastructure? And seriously, do we have baseload power that will keep up with all these millions of extra green cars?
Well, Chris, we know the price of the electric vehicles. It's over $60,000, which is a lot of money, particularly if you're also paying huge petrol prices coming from the outer suburbs of Sydney, where I am right now. So, you know, this is a socially unjust policy. It's inequitable. It hits working class families the hardest. And all for what? I mean, you know, the reality is Australia has two unique characteristics. One, we have the highest rooftop solar rates in the world, so you'd think the Green Lobby would be, you know, very happy about that. But we have the lowest take-up of electric vehicles for the reason we have to travel long distances, they're very expensive. Australia hasn't got a car manufacturing industry. Most of these cars come from China. Again, it's a case of more jobs for China, fewer jobs and income for Australians. So, you know, you've just got to live. As government, you should live with the realities that you've got and be happy about the solar and let people drive the car they want, they need, the one that's convenient for them, with our Australian driving distances, particularly here in the outer suburbs and also the regions.
Spot on. Now, you've been critical of the Australian education sector, and a new report in the AFR today sees the OECD take aim at our conservative universities in Australia, which are putting a handbrake on students. The OECD is instead encouraging students to rethink what they want to learn, where, when and how they want their studies, putting students in charge. Students must be so badly treated and downtrodden, Mark. How could we?
Well, the service is lousy. People are sitting in their bedrooms online, paying huge amounts of money for university tuition that really you could get on any website. So universities have got to get back to face-to-face teaching, but Chris, they've also got to solve the problem of the attrition rate. One of the greatest failings of our universities is in teacher training, where we talk about the teacher shortages, which are real and biting, particularly here in New South Wales. But 50% of students drop out of these courses. You go over to non-university, non-government sector, Alpha Crucis College, they're getting a 95% retention rate, only 5% dropout. So if they can do that through turning teaching into more like an apprenticeship model, with plenty of plenty of in-time teaching in the classrooms integrated with the theory, why can't our universities do a lot better than a 50% retention rate? You know, on every front, the universities are failing our students, particularly in training the next generation of teachers.
Hey, that's a great story for another night. We should do a little bit more on that public versus private tertiary sector. Thank you very much for your time, Mark Latham.